Howdy YouTube, Mark DeRemer here from Refurbished Gentleman, and today on RGTV, you're going to be watching a step-by-step tutorial of one of my finishes. Although this finish is about 3 to 4 years old, and some of the products, if not all of the products within the video, are products I no longer use. So what you're going to see is in the video description below and throughout the video, for the supplies used, I'm going to give you what I recommend currently. The main reason for that is if you contact me and say, hey Mark, I'm working through your finish and it's whatever you said to do is not working. If you use what I recommend, it's gonna be easier for me to help you walk through those steps. If you use some of these older products that I no longer use, it'll be harder for me because some products change, they change their formulas, all that different kind of things. It just makes it harder for me to walk through it with you. Does that mean you can't use your products or the products within the video? No, but I just wanted to be clear before you jump into the video that what's actually in the video is not gonna be what I recommend based on those facts. So I hope you enjoy the video. I look forward to seeing anything that you guys create from this, and be sure to tag Refurbished Gentleman on all my social media if you do decide to try it. All right, so step one is our base coat. And again, we're using, make sure I get my names right, Hurricane Gray. I just wanted something that was kind of an earth tone gray color, knowing that I was gonna go with a dark brown wax over the top when it was all said and done, and knowing that gray is gonna peek through here and there. So that's what I went with. If you're new to Dixie Belle, they got the screw tops, which is very convenient. You just want to make sure if you get a whole lot of paint in and around here, you just kind of wipe it off before you're done so the tops don't stick too bad. So start with that. And again, if it's your first time using Dixie Belle, it's going to be interesting because it's going to go on a little bit different than Annie Sloan's chalk paint. So it's going to be where it almost goes on like an acrylic, where it goes on really smooth and has a sheen to it, but as it dries, it turns more into that chalk paint finish that you're accustomed to if you're an Annie Sloan person. So it's a little different, but still very, very good paint, and you may actually like the fact that it goes on a little smoother better, actually. I think my wife tried it the other day, and she likes the Dixie Belle a little better because of that. Has a little less tug, a little less friction to it because it is a little smoother on that initial paint when you initially paint it on. So again, we're going to do a base coat of this Hurricane Gray. So we're going to get one solid coat. So I want to completely cover the wood for this finish. And the main reason for that is I really want to have the wood show where I want it to show. And to do that, I need to completely cover it. And then when we go to distress it later, I'll have the wood pop out where I want it to pop out, and not where I missed in some painting spots. And this is really going to be the only coat for this finish that is going to be complete coverage. And you'll see what I mean as we go along with that, but that's why this step is kind of important if you want complete coverage of the wood, because the other 2 layers of paint we're going to use, we're not going to have that happening. It's going to be a uniquely done layering process after this. But as you can see, this goes on very much like an acrylic. If you've not used an acrylic paint before, it goes on very, very smooth. Usually has a good sheen to it. And the Dixie Belle paint starts like that, and then it ends up with that really cool chalky finish, if that's what you're looking for. And then obviously if you do like a poly over top, you could bring that sheen right back out. And they have gator hide, I'm trying to remember all the names. They have gator hide, which is their really strong, super waterproof deal. which I've tried and works really well. And then they have just regular coats with like a flat and the gloss I used worked really well and turned out really well on a piece I used it on. So anyways, just like any other chalk style paint, you're not going to get one coat coverage. There's just no way, no matter how thick you try to slap it on there. And I'm a strong proponent of not slapping on a thick layer unless you're going for a high brush stroked look, which I don't often do. So I usually recommend, and people ask the question, how do I get such a nice flat brush free look to my finishes? It's usually just thin coats. You know, if it takes 3 coats, it takes 3 coats. But if you do thinner coats and you just even your strokes out like I'm doing now, I'm going with a grain, just flattening it out. And with these Klingons, it works really well with that. All my little shorties were dirty because those are my favorite ones, those S50s. So I got the 45 out and it works really well, especially with this paint. So anyways, just a nice thin layer, just like that. And you're gonna have some of the wood peeking through. The next step after this will be the cotton, which is gonna get put on in spots here and there. But we'll get to that next. So the next time you see this, I'm gonna have 2 layers. Because when I did it on the piece that I used, 2 layers was really great coverage. So that was all I needed was the 2 coats. So for now, that'll be it. And you'll be able to see in the beginning of the next video how much this turns into more of a chalky look to it. So you'll still have that chalk style look with Dixie Belle's paint. It's just going to start off quite a bit smoother than Amy Sloan's. So anyways, that's it to start. And again, next we'll have the second coat on already, and we will be working with the cotton to get the layers on. All right, here we go. So our next step is going to be the cotton, right? Yep, I gotta look to make sure I got the colors right. Cotton put on in spots. Now, as you'll see, this Hurricane Gray turned out beautiful, right? Really awesome color. Matter of fact, when I did the first piece that I did this finish on that you're going to see in the pictures, I did just the one color and almost stopped right there and did like a brown or a black wax as accenting because I really liked how the gray turned out. But I wanted to follow through with this finish because I had this finish idea that I actually did a sample board on, turned out really good. So I wanted to follow all the way through it anyway. So this is what it looks like. As a comparison, because I've used people that have followed the videos I've done and the work that I've done, it's a lot Amy Sloan related. I just started dabbling into some other paints. So as a comparison, I'm going to do that a little bit through this video just so you kind of understand, if you've never used Dixie Belle paint before, what you're looking at. So this paint ends up being a more chalk finish with no wax and stuff on it, like after the couple of coats, just like I said in the first video. It goes on a little bit smoother, ends up with that chalk finish, but the difference would be is this has a more finished feel and look to it before I even put any wax or top coat on it. So it's not quite as chalky, but still will have kind of that chalky feel to it. So it's just as a comparison. But that was 2 coats, covered really well. So that's all I did, even though it was a light color wood, it covered perfectly, just how I needed it to. So our next step is going to be the first of the layering that we're going to do over top of our base coat. So I'm going to do cotton, and what we're going to do is just in spots. So instead of doing an entire coat, I just decided to do in spots because over top of that we're going to do the frottage with the mixed color, which is not going to cover the whole, it's not going to cover everything. We're going to do one coat, but it's not going to cover everything at all. So whatever's below it is going to peek through. Well, I thought, and what ended up turning out pretty good, was that if there's like spots of other colors peeking through, it'd almost be like a weathered piece of wood that you find outside that, you know, had been painted 9 different layers, and this layer peeked through and this layer peeked through. That's kind of what I was going for. And that's why it's the weathered as part of the look, because that's kind of what I was going for. So to mimic that, instead of doing an entire coat, because if you do an entire coat, the likelihood is you're not going to have as much of the gray peeking through, which is ultimately what I wanted. I wanted the gray and the blue with spots of white. So that's what I did. So to get that effect, you're just going to get a little bit of paint. You don't need to get a whole ton, so almost like a dry brush, but not really. Just enough, just a little bit. And we're just going to lay it on like spots here and there. And again, there's no real specific way you have to do this. I would go with a grain if I had to tell you a way to do it to make sure it kind of looks right. But when I did it, even I was like, oh crap, did I just do that and mess it all up? But it turned out. So you just have to trust in the process, I always say, right? Because it never looks good until the very, very end, it seems like, with painting things. There we go. I'll add a little bit over to the other side. And again, you don't need a lot of paint for this, so that's another kind of cool part. You're adding a layer of something to your finish and not having to use a ton of paint to do it. So, just something like that, right? So what's going to happen is when we do the frottage layer of blue over top, it's going to go on, some's going to get pulled off, what's below you're going to see, and then once we get to the distressing stage, that's when it's all kind of going to get sanded together almost into one kind of cohesive unit, whereas now it looks kind of like a mess a little bit. But I promise, it'll all work out. So something like that. I mean, you could decide how little or how much, especially if you're like me. I like to do a sample board first just to test out the theory. If you're super adventurous and want to go at it on a piece, you know, all power to you. Ultimately, it's just paint, so you can always paint over it if you don't like it. So, but this is kind of what you're looking for. You know, down in the cracks, on the flat areas, just spots here and there of that middle color, which I decided to go with a white because at the end, I wanted to have some white peeking out because I thought the blue with the white would be great, and the gray as that base of depth or deepness of color peeking through would be perfect. And then of course, then you go to sand it, and then bring just another color out. Depending on what color your wood is, you'll have some of that peeking through in your corners and edges, and I actually did some flat areas for this too. So, but that's it for now. Next, we'll go through how I mix colors. I thought I'd go through that step since it is a part of this process, in case you're just like, well, how the heck do you mix colors? Because I know at first I was scared to death to do it because I was afraid either I wouldn't get the right colors another time I do it. I mean, it's just as simple as measuring, but I'll just walk through how I did mine, what container I put it in that made it even easier, all that stuff. So we'll go through that process, and then after that, painting on and pulling off using a frottage technique. So that's it for now. All right, so here we are. I zoomed in a little bit, so I'm going to bend down a little bit so you can kind of see, but really I need you to see this, not my face so much. So, you know, this is what you're going to get after the hurricane gray dries and then the cotton spots. So this is what you're going to get. You know, looks kind of like a hot mess a little bit, but ultimately we're going to cover this up with a semi-thick layer of our new pretty color that we created. So here's your color. And then we're going to use the frottage technique to pull some of the paint off. So it's going to be almost like a subtractive stipple where you paint the paint on, and then you take your brush or whatever, you know, tool you're using to dab into the paint and pull the paint back off, however you're choosing to do that. It's kind of the same concept, just with a different medium that you're using to pull it off. So what you're going to need is just any old random newspaper, right? So I'm just gonna walk through what I'm gonna do, and then I'm actually going to do it. But I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna zoom in directly on the piece so you can actually see what's happening a little bit better than the distance I have it at right now. So you can take your paint, right? You're gonna paint it on. It's gonna be sort of thick, not too thick, but probably thicker than you would if you're trying to get like nice, even, without any brush strokes kind of look, right? But thick enough because we're gonna create some texture with the paint or with the newspaper, right? So it needs to be thick enough to be able to create that texture. So you gotta think that's what you're trying to do. So you're gonna paint it on thick. You're gonna take your newspaper. Now, I didn't crinkle this up because it's gonna be loud, but it should be really crinkled up, and I'll show you in the next video when I get closer up. But crinkled up and flatten back out because you're gonna have all the cool little creases and cracks and all the cool stuff in it that is gonna get shown in your paint, which is what makes this so cool, right? Because it's such a cool, random, artistic texture that you can't get with your brush. You just can't get it any other way, that I found anyway. So once you paint it on, and you do this in small sections because you want your paint still to be wet. Like you paint it on, you go right to it. Don't wait. Especially this kind of paint dries quick. Any of the chalk paints dry quick. It'll stick to the paper and you'll leave paper behind if you do this where you either do it where it's drying too much or if you leave the paper on too long, okay? So again, we're gonna go through the steps. We're gonna walk through real quick. So you paint it on, you take your crinkled paper, you lay it on here and you push it down all through the spots where you want it to have, like this, and then you simply pull it off. And that's all there is to it. And you'll be surprised how cool it turns out. You think that's really simple, that's all there is to it, but that's all there is to it. So once we pull it off, all the little cricks and cracks and creases and everything that you made from that crinkled newspaper is now going to show up in your paint, and it's going to be a subtractive thing where it pulls the paint off in spots, not all over, but in spots. So you'll see your gray, you'll see your white, you'll see the layering that you've created all the way through, which is the other cool part. Now again, anytime you're doing layering, it's not going to look exactly how it's going to look until the end. So bear with me. It might not still look like, oh yeah, I want to do that mark finish, or that finish mark, until we get to the end. So like right now, it does not look very good, right? This next step, it's probably not going to look amazing yet either. But everything we do after is all going to accumulate to that final finish that was created on the piece. So bear with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, get a little closer, have my paper crinkled up already so I can show you that. Flattened out already so I can show you that. And then we're just going to go through exactly, I'm going to show you exactly what to do and how it works, how it looks. So, but I want to zoom in so you can see it a little bit better than having it, too far away where it's hard to see exactly what the crinkles did. All right, so that's what's coming next. All right, here we go. So I got you all zoomed in. So what I've done is I've taken that same newspaper, crinkled up in a real good ball, and then flattened it back out. So you'll see you'll have all the little cricks and creases and all that kind of fun stuff all throughout, right? So without further ado, I'm gonna get my handy dandy Klingon here. And we are gonna slap some paint on this thing. So again, kind of thick, and you don't want to take forever to do it. Especially, this is about as big of a piece as you're going to want to do with this technique. I'd say this is even stretching it a little bit on size of how much I should do, because this paint dries quick, even as thick as I'm going to put it on here, right? So hopefully it shows up in the video. You can see just how thick it is, but it's definitely leaving lots of brush strokes everywhere. So think about it like that. It needs to be thick enough where when you're painting it on, there's no way you could take the brush strokes out because it's so thick. And that's about where you want to be with it. How beautiful is that color, by the way, right? Love, love, love this color. Turned out really good. A lot of mixing, a lot of playing once I started using Dixie Belle stuff. That's funny. They actually are 30 minutes from my house. Never knew it when I first started painting, and ironically enough, another company asked me to test their paints out, and Dixie Belle found out or heard or somehow and invited me over to test out their stuff. So Suzanne and Terry over there, amazing, amazing people if you ever have to work with them. And super, super, super nice people. And gave me a ton of stuff to play with. So I've been very fortunate to be able to play with them and bring you guys some other products that are out there in the world that are just fantastic. And these are definitely that. Okay, so like I said, you gotta go quick. I might have been a little adventurous on the size I did. So you're gonna take your paper and you're flatten it all out. And when I say flatten, it's not all gonna get flattened because there's gonna be crevices and cracks and all that kind of stuff from when you crinkled it up. Oh, yeah, paint on my fingers. No big surprise there. Okay, and we got another one to fit this size over here. And again, you gotta go quick. Don't take forever with this because you don't want the paper to stick. You don't want it to start drying on you. You want to be able to just get the paper on, flatten it all out real good. And you don't want, it doesn't have to be like credit card scraping across flat, but flat enough where it's getting all the surfaces you're not missing. Okay, so we're gonna pull this off. Check this out. Boom. How cool is that? Boom. How cool is that? So hopefully that you can see that, but look at how cool that is. Wicked, wicked like texture all the way throughout. I mean, just cool. And you can see the white peeking through here, and the gray and this color blue really just go well together. The white peeking through here, and it just gives it a cool textured look. And it'll be really thick in spots, and other spots it won't be so thick. This spot got flattened out, you know, it's nothing exact or perfect, which is what I kind of dig about this finish. It's not something you're going for this absolutely neatly perfect. It's a weathered, distressed kind of look. So adding this cool texture to it just went with the finish that I was going for. So I mean, yeah, this is only the third time I've even done this. And it just still is cool looking at it now. I did it once on the sample board, loved it. Did it a second time on that piece, and then a third time now, and it turned out just as good every single time. Yeah, so it's just cool. Just a different thing you can do to get, like I said, texture and layering. That's the cool part, because it's subtractive, so it's going to pull some of the paint off and let you know some of that other cool stuff we had going on below. But again, this might not be your, you know, your style or whatever, but bear with me. It's gonna keep building and getting better. So next, after this dries, we're gonna hit it with some distressing, and that's where it's gonna be cool, because we're gonna bring some directionality to it, because we're gonna distress across the paint, right? And then we're gonna distress across the paint in the corners and edges of some flat areas to get some directionality going. So like almost like a wood grain line through the paint. It'll bring some of the wood, some of the gray, some of the white, all that stuff kind of peeking through. And then we hit it with some clear wax and some brown wax, and it's really going to set off the piece. Now, if you get to the clear wax portion of it and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool without it. That's cool. But I went for a weathered look for this, so I added the dark wax to age it a little bit to give it more of that weathered style. So, but yeah, that's Frottage, folks. I mean, it's really just, you just have to try it. I mean, it really is just that simple. You know, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I tell you what, to get a really cool layered weathered look, it can't get any easier than that, I don't think. So, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little part. And then, like I said, next, after this dries, we're gonna do some distressing. Flats, corners, kind of a medium for me. And then we'll get to the clear wax. Howdy y'all, hope you're enjoying the video so far, and if you are, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you know next time I add some new content, and please, please, please share. The biggest thing about my our motto, or whatever you want to call it, is create, share, inspire. And that's what I'm trying to do, create content to inspire people to start painting, to try new things, and just maybe step outside their comfort zone. So if you are enjoying this content, please hit that subscribe button, which will ultimately help me grow my channel and in turn allow me to reach more people. All right, so now we're all dried up, paint's all finished, and we're on to the distressing and the waxing portions of this finish. Turned out really cool, right? It actually has a textured look and a feel in some spots. So when you do your distressing, you just have to figure out how much you want or how little you want. For this, it's kind of a medium where I did edges, corners, and some flat areas to give that directionality through the paint. So instead of it looking like it's kind of all over the place, it looks like it's going with the grain kind of thing. And that's how I did it. So I use, for the most part, I use this flexible sandpaper. I'll have it in the description, what kind it is and stuff like that. And for this, just a block is good, however you want to use it. But whenever you're doing big flat areas, this is good just because you can kind of, sand exactly how you want to and the sandpaper stays put. Whenever I'm doing little intricate details, I'll take this sandpaper right off and use it with my fingers, just because it's so flexible. You can wrap it around your finger and get all those detailed spots however you want. But for this, I'm not going to do the whole thing because I don't want to get dust all over the house. But ultimately, you're just going to take and go along the edges of your piece, corners, something like that. And what's going to happen is you're going to bring forth all the layers of paint you have below with the different paint steps that you did, or whatever you want to call it. So all that's going to come through along with the wood. So you're going to have a little bit of wood, a little bit of gray, a little bit of white, and still whatever blues hidden around it as you're distressing off. So for this particular sample board, you can see it's just kind of pulling it off the corners. And then for the flat area, it's basically an artistic thing, however you think you want to do it. For this particular finish, I kind of went with the grain. So the drawers, you'll see I went left to right. For the sides, I went up to down, just to kind of go with what the grain would be, and that's how I painted this on. So we're looking at it like it was like this, as an example, up and down, and I just take and I sand up and down. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to pull some of this back off. Something like that. Now, I wouldn't do it standing behind it like that, but I just wanted to show you. So you're going to kind of go like this, and you'll find with the Dixie Belle paint is it sticks to stuff good. So it doesn't distress quite as well as say an 80 stone paint does, because it really has a higher level of adhesion. Is that a word? Or not even that, because anti-stone sticks real well, but I guess the end result is a more finished thing, almost like it has some finishing properties to it, where it doesn't distress as well. It just doesn't distress as well, I guess is the long and the short to that story. So you're going to have to press a little harder, you're going to push a little harder, and you're going to have to be cognizant of what you're doing, how you're doing it. When you use this paper like this, it'll clump up and it'll get in pieces and it'll pull at your paint. So you just have to be aware of that too. It flicks right off. So if you're doing this, you do a little bit and brush it off, and do a little bit, brush it off. It's the beauty of this paper is you can continuously use it, but when it clumps, it will yank at your paint in the spot where that piece is clumped on there. So you just have to be careful with that. So anyway, I'm going to finish this outside, but needless to say, the distressing part is just however you choose to do it. Like as you can see, I decided to go up and down with the grain of the wood, and you can see now it has some directionality through all your layers of paint. And there'll be more. spots where I'm going to go outside and distress this. And before I do the clear wax video, you'll obviously be able to see exactly how I finished it up. But that's pretty much what I do with this particular finish, just to ensure, like I said, you have some direction going with those distressed spots. It pulls some of the layers of paint out that were below, and then especially if you have the white spots, you're going to want to look and find those areas and distress that and pop a little bit of that white out too. So once I'm done with this, we'll be on to clear wax and then brown wax to finish it up. And like I said, I'll show you guys exactly what it looks like when I'm done and ready to do the clear wax. All right, now got the distressing all done. Took it outside, so I'm dust all over the place in here. But long and short, I went with some lines to create that grain. And that was the basic premise to this. And with the distressing, you're bringing out more of that weathered look, one, and two, some of the layers of paint that you've done below. So you'll see where I had that white spot, I hit that really well. And hopefully you can see this with the lighting and everything. But you see the white came out really good right down to the wood in that spot. So anywhere where you did some white, you want to get that a little bit more pressure just to bring it out. And I did all the corners, all the edges, and some flat areas. And that's kind of what I call a medium for me. A heavy would be where it's like a lot of wood showing. So that's what I did for this particular finish. And the end result turned out really well. The dark or the brown wax is what really finishes this off. So if you're still scared to this point and you're like, what the heck did Mark have me do? I promise it will get even that much better, and it'll kind of all culminate with that final dark or brown wax that Dixie Belle has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear wax this first. Before I do that, I'm going to zoom in a little bit because I want to watch you, or allow you to watch how it changes just with the clear wax alone. And I'm looking at the video back, it's a little bright and probably harder for you guys to see now that we're getting to these stages of things, as far as where you have to get closer to really see how it's going to change and see exactly how I'm putting it on and wiping it off and all that stuff. So for the next video is going to be clear wax. I'm just going to zoom in on that, and the next video after that is going to be the brown wax. It's already going to be zoomed in. And I'm going to go through how I put it on, how I'm wiping it off, and kind of what my thought process is for that. Okay, so here we go. And I think you see that a little bit better. You can see the lines I've done with the distressing, all the spots throughout, and now we're ready for some clear wax. So this is their clear wax. It looks white and goes on with a little bit of that white color, whatever you want to call it, and then completely clears up. So don't stress over that. If you're looking in here like, why does it look white? It's not supposed to be white. It will not be white, I promise. But it will have like almost like a fog over it, foggy film kind of thing. But it will end up being completely clear when it's done. So we're just going to paint this on, and I really wanted to zoom in on this part because I wanted you to see how the color changes. It's going to deepen the gray, you know, just exactly like you would think most chalk paints do, especially if it's been distressed, because it gets all the dust and everything on it. No matter how much you wipe off, it doesn't go away until you do the top coating to it. So I don't know how much you can see, but it's definitely deepened the color over here, and it's still like a matte look over here where the paint hasn't been touched yet. I got bristles in my finish. There we go. So we're just going to lay this on, and we're going to wipe it off just like we would any other furniture wax. And I usually go with the grain. I'm not I don't do circles much. I don't do this a whole lot unless I feel like I'm not, whatever paint job or finish I'm working on, I don't feel like the wax is getting down into my paint. I just usually kind of go with either the brush strokes or the grain of the wood, or however it is the finish is that I'm working on. And this is about as big of an area as I would do before I'd start wiping it off. Just because you don't want it to get too tacky and sticky before you can get it back off of your piece. But to me, here live, it's already changed how it looks, which I think waxing is probably my favorite part of the whole process because of how it takes that blah, chalky, matte paint that I know after I'm done is going to look great, but at the time you're like, oh man, I don't like how all this looks because it doesn't have like that finished look to it yet. And now it kind of brightened up the blue, deepened the gray, made the white pop out in spots where I have the white popping out. Just perfect, just like that. And then take your little shop towel, already folded in fours. If you don't do this, you should do it. Fold it in fours, that way you can wipe this side, fold it over, use those two sides, just so you're not balling up one piece, one whole piece for one area. Definitely don't want to be wasteful if you can, unless you can afford it. Just gonna pull this right off, and this will buff really well, you know, the next day after it has time to set. Give it a little bit more sheen if that's what you're looking for. A lot of times that's what I do. I'll take a buffing brush, give it a good buff job, like a day or two later. Make sure it has a good sheen to it. Alright, look at that. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. This turned out really well. So this was a really great example of what you could get with this finish. So again, you got the base coat, then you got the white, and then you got the blue that got Frottage technique done, and then distressing through it to give it those lines, those cool lines that give it somewhere to go. Because a lot of times when you do these textured finishes, you just kind of like splatter down there, but a real weathered piece of wood would have the lines of how the grain was, or you know, just how it looked in general when somebody painted it on, because it kept its wood grain. So you're kind of adding that back after you just threw layers of paint over top of it. And then the wax, all the wax, love the wax. Wax really just brings it to life, really. So that's what we have. And next we're going to give it some brown wax, and that again is even going to change it up even further, where it's going to have a whole different look to it, and that's where it's really going to get that aged, cool aged look. But you might get to this point and think, wow, this looks really cool, I'm going to keep it just like this, or you go on to the next step. So, but that's it for right now. Alright, so now on to our final step, and this is where it's all gonna really change this piece. So this is tricky too, because it depends on how many cracks and crevices you have, where you want to put it, but for this finish, that's kind of where it's going to want to go, is in the cracks and crevices, leaving your major flat areas with not a whole lot of wax, because we still want all the cool colors and layering of work that we did to show through. So this is their brown wax. I just have a little waxing brush, something real easy for this particular piece. And we're gonna shove it into the corners. And we press it down into our edges and corners. And then we're gonna wipe it off to give it some age. And if it's the first time you've ever tried furniture painting and dark waxing freaks you out a little bit, you know, it's nothing to be freaked out about. It's definitely a unique experience the first time you do it because the wax is, you know, very, very dark. And you're like, oh my gosh, did I just ruin my piece? But you can wipe it off. You can pull it back off with some clear wax. There's different things you can do to pull it back off if you don't like it, but I'm pretty sure you will like it ultimately. Okay, so I did in and around the cracks, right? So on your flat areas, I'm gonna pull a little bit. So I'm gonna find maybe a darker spot like this one, or where the wood's at more than likely, and go right across that little spot right there. And just give a little bit there, a little bit there, a little bit there. Not too much because that's where the white is, but a little bit. Just kind of hit where the wood is, I guess is how I did this one. Okay, and then this will dry fairly quick, so you don't want to wait too long to go with your shop towel. Again, in force, and you're just going to pull and wipe, just like that. And what that's going to do is, because you did the textured look with the frottage, a lot of that wax will fall right down into those brush strokes, those oh yeah, look at that. How cool is that? I don't know, hopefully you can see it. But where that frottage was, it's got the little layers, and there's just like the most minute little cracks for that wax to sit, but it does. It sits right down in it. And it just gives a really cool, aged, weathered look. And it really complements the rest of this. Okay, so let me see here. Hopefully I'm not blocking your view too bad. Yeah, that's looking cool. Like right through here, all that wax is sitting right down into it. And it just darkens the blue up a little bit. I actually did this finish on my first sample board with the Gulf, and it made it more of a green look. And that's almost what's happening here, is the brown over this blue will give it a little bit more of a green kind of look. So I knew that was going to happen, so I had to have something more of a blue color because I didn't want it to go green, start green and then go more green. I wanted it to stay right in this color range that it is right now. So that's why I did the mixture, to make sure it stayed exactly the color that I was wanting it to after I got to this point, which is another great reason to do sample boarding. Because you just never know until you actually go all the way through a finish to know for sure if it's something that's going to turn out how you want or that you're just going to like in general. Alright, that looks really cool. There. So I don't know how, hopefully how well you guys can see that, but you can see the dark wax sat down in all the little ridges and bumps that the frottage made. It's definitely in the corners, and that's where you want to really make sure it sets, because natural aging, that's where the, you know, you're going to have those dark spots is in your corners and sometimes in your edges, so you want to make sure they'll stay in there. And just a little tip for that, I don't know if you caught what I was doing, but I flattened my shop towel out and went flat across this edge right here, which means where it was indented in, this wasn't touching because I went flat. So whatever was indented in kept the integrity of the brown wax that I threw on there, because I wasn't digging down into those cracks to pull it off. I was going flat across it and pulling like this and just allowing that dark wax that's deep in there to stay. The top part got blended with the paint, and the rest looks really good. So that's your look. Now I'm going to probably go around the outside too. So if you had a piece like this, you're just going to hit the outside, and you just really want to jab it down into the edges, right? So I'm going to do the front side so you guys can see. So just something like that, right? And again, using as flat as possible, you go across like this, and once it builds up, it will stop pulling it off. See over here, it pulled, this side it didn't. So we're going to flip our shop towel. Having it fourths just should be fairly easy. So we flip it back over. I'm going to completely clean inside again. And then I'm going back another fourth just because I want a smaller, flatter spot to grab. So again, that flat, pull, see that? And it leaves the dark wax in the indented spots because I'm not pushing my shop towel in far enough to get it, which I don't want to do. I want to leave that dark wax down in those indented areas, because that's what would happen with an aged piece. It would get aged in just those spots and would stay there. And there we go. So that, folks, is your weathered Dixie Blue Gulf finish. All done up. And depending on what kind of piece you have, whether it has a lot of flat edges or lots of cracks and crevices and stuff, you know, this could be even more pronounced. This is kind of a flat sample board, so as the piece didn't have a whole lot of detailed areas, but this could be really, really cool on a detailed piece where at that very, very last step, you did the brown wax, and you got the brown wax down in there to really give it a cool age to it. Hopefully you enjoyed that video, you learned something, and ultimately at the end of the day, get inspired to try it. I really hope you do. If you do, be sure to tag Refurbished Gentleman on Instagram and or Facebook, and just let me know, let me see what you've done. And of course, if you have questions, drop them in the comments down below, or you can find me on Facebook on a more day-to-day basis. Please, please, please subscribe, share this content out if you did enjoy it. And last but not least, if you do decide to utilize the products that I'm currently using that I'm recommending to duplicate this finish, you'll find everything in the links down below. They're all affiliate links, and those affiliate links will continue to support me and allow me to provide free content for you. And in some cases, I do have discount codes from the companies that I work with that'll allow you to get a little bit extra something off of your final purchase. So all those things are at no cost to you, but they do help me in the end continue to do what I love to do. So everybody have a blessed day, and as always, happy painting.